Welcome back. Religious organisation the Freedom of Religion South Africa is raising concerns over the country's controversial Expropriation Bill. The organisation says the bill adopted by the National Assembly last year could threaten churches. The proposed laws are currently going through a public participation process across the country. But to hear more about their concerns, I'm joined now by their Executive Director, Michael Swain. Thank you so much, Mr. Swain, for speaking to us this evening. Now, your organisation has raised concerns that the proposed laws and definitions in the bill are far too broad and may be used by the state to come after land held by churches or other religious groups. And some other religious groupings have expressed hope that the Expropriation Bill may provide churches with greater access to land. Do you think they're being naive?
No, I think it's important to say right off the bat that our concern with this bill is the potentially unintended consequences that the expropriation without compensation actually will result in. So, for example, as the bill stands, faith communities could potentially see their land and other property being expropriated or taken away against their will without compensation because there is no religious exemption. And that's really what 4SA is arguing for. Because obviously, as the right for religious freedom makes very clear, religious communities can certainly, and almost as an essential part of their right, do gather together, own property, build buildings, training centers, mission stations, or whatever it may be. And that is very much in keeping with their right to express their faith. And the fact that there is no exclusion for that, given, of course, that religious communities typically play a vital part in the upliftment and the development and the serving of their local communities, we think that that is an omission. So essentially, it could well be, and we believe that it is, an unintended consequence, and that's what we would like to see fixed. We would like to see a specific clause that would exempt religious organizations who are using their property for their purposes to not be subject to expropriation without compensation in terms of this bill.
You also take issue with the definition of property being far too broad, and that affects pretty much everyone, aside from religious organizations.
That is correct. And of course, it would also affect religious organizations because the way that property is currently defined, potentially it does go beyond land and land rights, which essentially this bill was seemingly initially put forward to address. And so, yes, the definitions are very important in law because obviously once a bill is passed and it becomes law, then that is what stands and that is what can be enforced. And so, again, to protect, we believe, particularly the rights of the faith community, property, we believe, should be restricted. It shouldn't be open-ended criteria. It should be restricted. And so you know exactly what the law actually stands for. You have legal certainty. That's a very important principle of law.
You've also pointed out that the bill does not provide for judicial oversight. What would be a more acceptable setup for you?
Well, certainly, given the fact that there can be expropriation without compensation on an urgent basis, at the moment, there is no redress against that. It would simply happen. And we believe that the courts are obviously very well placed to hear such an issue. If you're going to lose your land and not, or any property for that matter, and be paid nil compensation for it, then we believe that there should be a safeguard built in so that there can be a court application and that the court could therefore make a decision and a ruling on that before that expropriation without compensation takes place. That would, again, seem to be a reasonable and fair and equitable position.
So you're joining a chorus of voices opposing the bill during the public consultation process. Are you forming any specific alliances with groups or organisations also expressing their concerns?
No, not at all. We are Foursquare, Freedom of Religion South Africa, 4SA, which is the organisation of which I'm the executive director. We have a very specific focus as a legal advocacy group on upholding and protecting the right to religious freedom guaranteed in our Constitution. So our petitions and our submissions are limited to effectively seeing religious freedom rights fully and properly protected. And we believe, again, with a small adjustment to this law, as far as our interests are concerned, others may have broader interests and broader concerns. And obviously, that's something that we would respect, but we are not aligned to anyone other than the specific interests and the constituencies that we serve, which are the faith communities of South Africa, for all faiths.
So public participation processes in South Africa have been criticised as not being thorough, exhaustive, all-encompassing, reaching out to a diversity of communities. In some instances, they have been categorised as exactly the opposite. Do you have faith that this public participation process, where the Expropriation Bill is concerned, will be different and will offer all South Africans the chance to effectively submit their concerns?
Well, there have obviously been extensive public participation processes for this particular bill, and 4SA has been a part of every one of those submissions. We have made our submission at every stage of the development of this law and the process that it's following. And yes, we believe and we trust that there is proper due legal process. And frankly, if there is not proper due legal process, then obviously that would open this whole thing up to court challenge subsequently. So yes, we follow the process, we trust the process, and if it turns out to have not been properly followed, then obviously it will be challenged, no doubt, by others. But we would also then, if we believe that our constituency has been marginalised in the process, we would look at considering how we would join in such an action, probably as an amicus curiae, as a friend of the court, to specifically represent the rights of religious freedom.
Thank you so much for speaking to us tonight. Freedom of Religion South Africa's Executive Director, Michael Swain.